everyone's warm. We're going to start shortly. But in the meantime, can we all please just add our student numbers to the chat just for record keeping purposes? If we can start just inserting your student numbers in the chat, please. Thank you. All right, I see them coming in there. Thank you so much. So good afternoon again. My name is Lauren, and this is now our second session. I'm not sure if everyone in the room was with us last week, but we will just do maybe a quick recap for those who were not in our session last week so that no one is left behind. If you can please also just check in the chat, Adal has posted a link to the attendance register. Please just click that and fill out the attendance register as well for record keeping. Right, Amy, I see you only got a notification last week. I mean, about it this week. Okay, no problem. I think there's still going to be a little bit of, people joining in as the notifications come through. I'm not sure how the system is working right now, but I'm glad that you're able to join us regardless. So welcome to you. Is there anyone else that was not in our session last week? Just so I know how much to, just how detailed to go in our recap. Right, I see Caitlin, you weren't here last week. All right, Liesel as well. All right, no problem. We will try to catch up. Of course, I can't cover everything that we did last week, but we will see how we can all, come to get to the same place. Okay, so welcome to our facilitation session. This is our second session, as I said, for RSC2601. And in the first session, we've just covered a few of the basic ground rules or basic rules of engagement for our sessions. I'm going to quickly go through them again because I see that quite a few of us in today's session weren't here last week. Okay, so just a basic sort of rules of engagement is if we could all please keep our cameras switched off and mics muted, just so that there's no interruptions during the session. If you are wanting to, of course, raise a question or a comment, you're welcome to put it in the chat or to just use the hand icon to raise your hand so that I can see that you want to say something and then give you the platform to speak. At the bottom there, then you then see the tabs. I don't know if you can see my mic there. The little people's tabs just for everyone who's in the session. It's a list of our participants. The little message tab is for our chat. So that's where most of the interactions will be coming from you guys. But like I said, I am open to, if you raise the hand, I then will give you the space to ask a question. Of course, your camera icon, your mic icon, and once we are done, the leave button there. So we have now all put our student numbers in the chat, I believe. If you can also maybe scroll up and you'll see the link that Adele posted to the attendance register. That is also very important to fill out. So if we could please do that as well. Yes, so last week we talked about the time and days of these sessions being open to negotiation. So I think I just want to find out from everyone that's in the room right now if this time works for you. Is 5 o'clock an okay time, or should we shift it a bit? Because we have had some other students saying that, you know, some of you are still clocking out of work at 5, and so it's a bit of a close call to just finish work and then jump into a session. And then in that case, we could move it to 5:30. Yeah, so if I can get some input there. Caitlin, I see you saying 7. I think 7 would be a little bit too late for a lot of people. Yeah, 7 is way too late. So either we're looking at a 5 o'clock start or 5:30 start. All right. Okay, so except for the one, I'm not seeing any like big concerns with the timing. Okay, Rachel is saying 5. If we all, I don't know how to put a vote out now. Because you see, we also don't want it to start too late, and then, you know, I think I'm just trying to keep in mind that people do have other responsibilities also, and you don't want to go too much into the evening when, you know, if you've got family responsibilities that need to start, that also needs your attention. So yeah, it's either 5:30 or 6. I'm gonna just, I'll look at the chat in a while and see if anyone else has suggested a time. But for now, 5:30 or 6 is probably what we're looking to. We can wrap up we can maybe finalize it towards the end of our session. Okay, so just wanting to highlight that in addition to these sessions, we do have one-on-one consultations as well. And sorry, Inga, your mic is turning.
Oh, sorry. How do I turn it off? I'm so sorry.
No problem. Just click on the mic icon, this one here. Just click on that. It's at the bottom of your screen.
Oh my goodness, no.
Inga, you on a cell phone?
I see.
Okay.
Perfect. Thank you. Thanks for the help there as well, Caitlin. So we do have one-on-one consultations. If you do want us to discuss something that is not being covered in the session, a problem that you are having that's a little bit more specific, then we will do that. Then we can do that. You can contact me, and you can schedule a one-on-one consultation. Yeah, and I think just basics is that, you know, we prefer for people not to come late into the class, otherwise it will interrupt the flow of the session. Also that we won't be discussing technical issues or admin issues or exam issues or anything that is administrative. I won't be able to answer those questions. It is beyond my scope of practice, so I will most likely refer you to the relevant sources, but we won't be able to discuss those issues in the session. The recordings will be made available of all sessions, so I suppose even if you've missed last week's one, you can go back and find that. Yes, so Adele's saying that the one-on-one sessions will start next week, so you will get the information about that and how to schedule and all of that. Yeah. I think just important is our attendance register, and we will have a session evaluation form at the end. Just most importantly, I think to note is that these sessions are not tutorial sessions. So we won't be going into content and explaining content, etc., etc. It's mostly around trying to develop the practical skills and equip you with the tools that will need to make learning easier in relation to this particular module. So I will try as best as possible to relate the practical things that we're doing in our sessions to the modules, but it is not super module specific. So if there is something in the module that, like I said, that is more specific that you want us to discuss, then we can have the one-on-one consultations for that. All right, I'm just going to move along. If there are no other questions at this point. Yes, we can do those in the one-on-one consultations, Amy. Yep, absolutely. All right. So for today, I wanted us to just recap what we have discussed. Last week, we looked at comprehension or comprehension and reading. We looked at what it is and why it is so important. So in starting with that, we had said that the first thing that when we are engaging with our material, whether it be for this module or any other module, our first interactions with our material is in reading it, right? When we're needing to read first so that we can understand. But a lot of the times students we read because we want to complete an assignment, or we read because we want to, get enough information to write an exam. And so when we're reading for this purpose, we're not necessarily giving ourselves the time to read to understand. And that robs us of, and that really puts us at a disadvantage because you're reading for something else, and it's easy to just skip by and miss out on important information that could have helped you to really understand what it is you're reading. So that's why we're saying we want to move away from reading to answer and move into reading to understand. And why it is so important, of course, is that once you understand something, you're able to really engage with it. You're able to read critically and you're able to extract understanding from it, to the point that if someone asked you, hey, if you read the qualitative versus quantitative research, if someone were to ask you, you can at the drop of your hat be able to explain it to them, because when you read it, you actually read to understand, and you actually allowed yourself the time to delve deep into the material, delve deep into the text, and understand exactly what it is the author was asking you was trying to communicate. So we say that's why reading with comprehension is so important, and it also allows you to be able to write a lot more clearly and effectively, because the more that you are exposed to something, the better you'd be at it. So in the same way that if you find yourself in a community where people are speaking French, right? You may not know a lot of French, but being in that community for maybe 1 year, by the end of the year, you're bound to speak some French because you are being exposed to this thing all the time. So that's the same with reading. If we want to get better at writing, we need to first expose ourselves to a lot of reading. And especially if you want to get better at academic writing, which is very formal and very detailed, you need to expose yourself to academic reading and really taking time to sit with it, to understand it, so that by the time it comes to you actually having to write an academic paper, you are it comes almost automatically to you, because you've been taking in these skills while you were reading these types of papers. So they say that's why reading comprehension is so important. of course, the most important thing is that it helps you to retain the information, and ultimately that's what we want. How do we know that we have learned something? We know that when someone is able to retain information, and not just for an exam, but long term, and they're able to apply it in different circumstances and situations. So from reading, we went into like summarizing, with summarizing being a good tool in which we can improve our reading or our understanding. Sorry. So we say that summarizing is a tool for information, for comprehension and information retention. And summarizing really forces you to sit down with the material and not just read it, but also sort of read it and then write it out. But when we're writing it out for your summaries, for our summaries, it's not that we're copy pasting, right? So the challenge really comes in, how can I write what I've read without using the words that the author has written, by just using my own words, because that's how we can test that someone has actually knows something, right? When they're able to explain it to someone else in their own words. Because if you're just, what's the word, regurgitating it, that doesn't show us that learning has taken place. That only shows us that you have a very good memory. And that's great, but I mean, long term, you know, you're going to forget that because there weren't solid links made in your mind while you were engaging with that text. Are there any questions around that so far? Hello, I'm so sorry. Looks like I just got disconnected there for a minute. All right, all good on summarizing. Thank you. I'm sorry. Please just bear with me if my network does go in and out. This is the online learning, is that we are prone to having some sort of technical or connection difficulties. But I am back. Yeah, and one thing I just want to highlight, another thing that we mentioned around summarizing is that it can really be used as a tool if you really want to pass a module. I think summarizing is one of the best things that you can do for yourself, and it has to be done sort of before, like it has to be done in time. Don't do it before, like a 2 days before an exam, because then it's not going to help. This is usually a good time to start summarizing your notes, because maybe you haven't yet started with your assignment, but once you start reading your study note, study guide, start reading chapter by chapter, make your summaries of each topic, make your summaries of each chapter, that by the time you get to your assignment or your exam, you're not having to learn new stuff. And I always tell the students, the exams should not be when you start learning stuff. Exam time is not for you to learn. Exam time is for you to revise what you've learned. So if you take the time during the semester to make summaries of your notes as you read through your study guide, you get to exam time or even your assignment time, and you can literally, if you've written up a really good summary, you can then just use your summaries to study for your exams, to revise, because everything is already the learning has taken place already. You understand the concepts, because this is what the process of summarizing does. It helps you to really solidify the learning. So it's happened already. By the time you get to exam, you are only just refreshing your memory. You're refreshing your memory, and you're just checking that you really understood it in the right way. So it's going to save time by the time you get to exam prep, where you're not having to read an entire study guide, which we know like is basically impossible if you're leaving it for like a week before your exam. So instead of having to go through an entire study guide, you go through your notes. You've written them, so the learning is going to be that much deeper. Okay, now that we've talked about that, I want us to actually practice this, because I don't want these workshops to be, or these sessions to just be like lectures, because they're not lectures and they're not tutorials, they're workshops, so we need to work. So I actually want us, and I had put it to the class last week, that we actually go back and try to write out a summary. So we can do it together. Actually, I've selected in the first part of the study guide. I hope that everyone has their study guide, or either virtual, an electronic or a physical copy of their study guide. From pages 21 to 31, the authors discuss the approaches to research. There are different approaches to research, the interpretivist, the positivist, and the critical approaches to research, to social science research. So what I want us to do now is, if you can pull up your study guide and just select one of these three approaches. They range within the page 21 to 31, but each approach is only about, I want to say, 1 page long, the discussion of each approach. So if we can please just pull out your study guides, read just one of the approaches, and then I want us to focus on what is the approach, so basically the definition of it, and its view on how to gain knowledge. And you will see the heading in your study guide. So we're going to be working together on this. Yeah, we're going to be working together on this, and then after about, I think, 10 to 15 minutes, then we can discuss and see what everyone came up with. Is everyone on board with that? And yeah, just a very short summary on that does not have to be more than 7 sentences long, because your summaries have to be short. There's no point writing, if you have a 1-page article and then you write a summary that's 1 page long. You know, the summary has to be a very condensed version of what you've read, but it ensures that you take in the most important points. Okay, so I'm going to assume now that everyone is pulling out their study guides, and they're going through 2 pages 21 to 31. You just choose one of the approaches, and then you write read through it. That's why we have to give time to reading. Read through it, make sure you understand, and then you write a few sentences on the main points. And when you write those main points, think about what it is that you want to remember when it's exam time. What are the points that you would want at exam time to remember? Yeah, so write down a few sentences, and then we will discuss them in about 10 minutes. Okay. So this will also give us a chance, if there are concepts or terminology that you don't understand, this is also now a good time for us to look at them and see, how do we deal with concepts that we don't understand? How do we make sure that we do, at the end of reading something, have understood everything that we've read? So it's now 17:25 on my side. Let's say by 17:40, we will come back, and then we will discuss what everyone has written. All right. So I'm going to mute my mic for the next 15 minutes. If there are any questions, you can just post it in the chat or something that we can look at during our discussion. Just post it in the chat. But I'm still here.
Yeah, this thing. Hmm? Yeah.
We just have a few minutes left. Kamhelo. We were working on an exercise, so that's probably why there was no sound. We have a few more minutes of the exercise and then we're going to discuss. Okay, I think we can come back. Can everyone hear me? I'm just having some issues with my connection here. Can you hear me? Yes, thank you. All right, so I've seen some comments in the chat, and yeah, some summaries in the chat which are very good. And I wonder if those in the chat who have posted their summaries can talk us through them, because what I'm noticing is that some of them feel like I'm reading the study guide, which is not a bad thing, because you want to, of course, keep the languaging that is used in the study guide, because it's the same languaging that you will obviously now see in your exams and in your assignments. But I want to hear if it makes sense for you in your own words. So I don't know if anyone is willing to maybe just talk us through their summary, but explain it to us, how you understand it. Amara, or Caitlin, and I think there was another one here. Amara, Caitlin, and Amy. All right, Amy, you can go. You talked about the critical approach. Yeah. Do you want to just talk us through in own words?
Yeah. Okay. Is my sound on? All good.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. So the critical approach is it's in the name, critical. It really wants to break everything down into what it really is, not just looking at taking it for face value. It wants to uncover everything and finding the underlying mechanisms of social patterns, because I mean, there are subtle euphemisms that we see every day in social society. And so that will affect everything that we do. So truly critical social scientists will want to expose these. And as the study guide says, that this needs to be done to reach the full potential of human creativity. And compared to the positivist one, it said that observable facts are preferred, but that's not the only thing. We need the hidden parts as well. Otherwise, there's no point. We need the critical. We need every facts, all the facts that we need possible to make a conclusion about social society.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Lovely. Thank you. Thank you. So can we think of maybe an example? What do you think that the critical theorist would want to look at? An example in society. This is open to anyone actually in the room. Based on the explanation that we got now, what do you think is something that the critical theorists would want to explore? And how would they explore it? I see a hand. Hold on. Holly. Sorry if I'm saying that incorrect. You can go ahead. You can unmute yourself, I think, and then.
Right. I think maybe it can be like gender violence. Yeah, and how they would go about it is to just try and actually find out what causes like these gender violences that are happening in our societies, and try to also figure out what can be done to decrease or to change the society.
All right. So which element are we wanting to look at critically? You remember Amy stressed on this fact that it's looking at, you know, something that appears to be a particular way, but if we look deeper, there's actually some stuff that are hidden. So what element do you think, or what, because gender violence, of course, is such a broad and such an important topic, but what in that do you think the critical theorists would be interested in? I see Amy and Caitlin. You can go ahead.
Hi, Caitlin. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I think what they would be interested in looking at is, so for example, if someone is for gender-based violence, they would try to understand their line of thinking and what gives them this point of view, in order
Right.
to find out why they believe this, and do they have the full picture? Do they have all the information, basically, so that they can critically think about it and not just have an opinion about something. You know what I mean? Or I don't know if I'm explaining myself well.
Mm-hmm. So that's a good point. Thank you, Amy.
Okay. Does it sound good? Right.
Yes.
So in terms of violence, that will be going on a more possible psychiatric analysis of people and anything, their history, their tendencies. So why people commit violent acts? God, where do you want to start? Maybe it's what they experienced as children in certain environments, maybe in a truly, what's the word, stressful or traumatic experiences that would make a person, or not make him, but perhaps influence them so profoundly that it's like normal for them. So from person to person, it can vary, of course. So perhaps what social scientists would want to really look at common factors, perhaps from person to person, that may have committed violent acts, and find common factors and try and find the solutions, social solutions, maybe public psychologists that are more affordable for those who cannot afford the more expensive ones, I would suggest. I mean,
Right.
in South Africa, we can see that this is really becoming a very big problem, a more recognized problem, I should say. And the fact is that perhaps there are those that it wasn't their fault. Perhaps there were social situations that really are the underlying causes, and we need to address that before truly blaming anybody that is involved. So really taking everything into account if for something like violent acts. Yeah.
All right, thank you. Thank you for the contributions to all of you. And exactly, there's no, of course, when it comes to topics like this, there's no right answer, right? But I think if we understand the core basis of what the critical theorists or the critical researchers are looking at, it's just that concept of looking deeper, as you all mentioned, and as Amy now just said, looking a bit deeper beyond if we look at, for example, the issue of gender-based violence, at face value, someone would just say men are violent, but then the critical scientist or the critical researcher is wanting to look at, but what's behind that? What's within that? What are the cultural values? What are just the upbringing and the mechanism, the societal norms, which has led people or men, to this place, or which has escalated violence to this place. So I don't want to get obviously too deep into that example, but that is basically the main tenet of the critical theorists. And I hope that everyone in the room now has a better understanding of that, but also have seen how by just summarizing, you get those key points. And once you understand the key point of the approach, or the key point of the theory that you're looking at, it makes it easier to engage with. And that's what we want when we are reading and when we are studying. We want to be able to engage with the material that we're reading. So thank you so much for that. I think let's look at another one. Did anyone cover the interpretive? Caitlin, you summarized the interpretivist. Can you talk us through that just briefly?
Okay, I just want to go so I can see what I said. So what I understood from the interpretive approach is that basically, I'm also trying to think of an example now, which I'm struggling with. So if there is a situation that has happened, okay, let me just try and, I'm getting too confused now. Okay, so the interpretive approach is basically giving each individual's viewpoint credit. So a situation or your social reality is basically, you know, it depends on your values, what you stand for, and how you perceive the things around you. So, for example, you know, if you are looking at a microorganism under a microscope, there are certain things to look for whatever you're trying to find. And then if you're looking at a social situation, maybe with friends or something like that, it's dependent upon each individual and how they perceive life. So basically what it comes down to is that social reality is relevant to every individual and it has meaning, and the meaning is attached to your values and what you believe in, basically.
Correct. And then how do we go about gaining knowledge about social reality from the interpretivist perspective?
I think by, you know, listening to people's stories and listening to how they perceive things, you know, not coming from a neutral place where you're just trying to understand one person's perception of what happened, you know. So maybe there's a conflict situation in your family and you're caught in a crossfire. Now you're trying to understand what happened from an interpretive point of view. You have to listen to what the person experienced, where they're coming from, so that you can understand that the reality of this situation is not right, it's not wrong, it's just meaningful. Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I think I just want to highlight that you mentioned that you look at it from sort of an objective perspective. And I want us to, when we are doing our summaries, to make sure that our summaries are, as much as it is for us to test how much we understand the text and that we're able to explain it now as we've been doing, it's also important to ensure that our summaries are factually accurate. Just that they are accurate factually, because we don't want to be studying the wrong thing. And understanding the wrong thing. So the text does tell us that with the interpretivist, I think the word is like, it's not value free. So an interpretive researcher is not going to go in and try to be completely objective, because they understand that you can't be completely objective. Your point there is to see the participants or the respondents as human with experiences, and if you're trying to understand how they interpret, you can't really do that by trying to be objective. That is a different approach. So just pointing that one out.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, Lebo, you covered the positivist. Can you talk us through that? It was a very, very brief summary there. I'm not sure if it covers everything, but maybe if you talk us through it.
Hello.
Hi, Lebo.
Can you hear me? All right. Yes, I've covered positivist. When I read there, I saw that believes that social reality can be discovered, and the positivist argues that we can perceive social reality through our senses since it exists out there. And again, so that it says, according to positivists, the behavior of human beings is determined by external influences that produce particular effects under certain conditions. That's all I can go about, and that positive knowledge. And I understood that when I was reading about this positive, is a positive knowledge is a knowledge of anything which is not true, by definition, is exclusively derived from experience of natural phenomena.
Okay,
I hope it makes sense.
it makes sense, but see, what I want us to do is to now, we've read it, and I see that you have taken out some important points. What I want you to imagine that you're explaining this to your little sister.
Oh, okay.
Right. If your sister asks you, what is positivist? Explain it to her. Explain it like you're explaining it to her. Because, we want to make it as simple for ourselves as possible. We understand that in the text, it uses all these academic terms, and that's fine, but we need to just remove ourselves a little bit to get to the place where you say, oh, I know what this means. I can talk about it. Right. So yeah, let's try it again, but like in your own words. Doesn't have to be formal. We just want to get to the point where you say and you feel that you understand what you've summarized.
Oh, okay. I'm not sure if I can do it, but I'll just try a little bit. All I understood is that it's a positive knowledge, and then anything which is not true, and it's a natural phenomena. It's the experience of natural phenomena. So positivist for me, it's all about being positive. I think I'll have to try again. Sorry, that's all I can say.
No,
Yeah.
no problem. See, this is great because sometimes when we're reading, we don't really challenge ourselves like this, right? We read and we assume we understand and we just continue because we want to finish the chapter. But once we start really sitting down and but what exactly is this about? And examples are very good. I think they give us a lot of examples in the study guide, so you can either take note of those examples, or you can think of your own examples, like we did with the gender-based violence example. You can try to apply it to help you understand a concept. So I think if everyone is okay with us maybe just delving a little bit more into the positivist so that we all understand. And so I think that we leave the session having, gotten some key points around summarizing and reading with understanding, but also, a little bit of help with some of the theoretical concepts that we are dealing with. So does anyone want to give a try with the positivist? If anyone else looked at it, I think that there was I see Amy's hand is up. Yes,
Hi.
Go ahead, Amy.
Hi. All right, so I didn't have the chance to fully go through it until just now, so I will try my best. Bear with me. So positivists are, in comparison to critical social sciences, they would rather focus on certain conditions that they can, what's the word, not manufacture, but they can design a study under certain circumstances, get certain results, and therefore present those as patterns or characteristics of society. But as the critical approach said, that's not enough to truly understand what is going on, to truly understand the science of society. So positivists, as it says here, they want something regularities to explain connections, relationships between, let's say, why this person is hired for a job and that person is hired for a job. A positivist might say, oh, because he's got a master's and he's got a bachelor's, but maybe that's not the case at all. Maybe there's an underlying factor that the positivist did not address. So perhaps they are not, prioritizing the more essential underlying factors when it comes to social patterns and behaviors of people individually. So yeah, that's my take as far as I've read and understood. Anybody want to add? Yeah. Okay. I hope that was okay.
That was fine. Thanks, Amy. Yes, so that if no one is going to add to that, I maybe to wrap up this session, I'd say that's exactly it. The positivists are, I think we want to look at it as they are sort of the first school of thought when it came to social science research, where they're very objective. Their whole thing was, if this and this happens, it means this, right? So it has to be very observable things. If I can use your example, Amy, if person A got the job, the positivist would say, well, person A got the job because he had the master's and he had 5 years of experience. That's it. So I can make a theory that people who have the relevant experience and who have the relevant qualifications will get the job. Something very observable that we can easily test and that is very objective. There are no emotions about that. It's just, I see this is what it means. That's what the positives are saying. And how they go about gaining knowledge is then through these observable facts. They observe and then they develop theories, or they have a theory that they want to then test. So that's what the positives look at. And then if we use the same example and go to the interpretivist, they would say, sure enough, the critical researchers, they would say, sure enough, the positives are saying it's this simple, but what if we look deeper, right? And we see that even some people who do have the relevant qualifications and experience don't get the job. So how do the positivists explain that? So then the critical researchers would go in and say, well, there's actually an age issue here. This person could have all the could tick all the boxes, but was discriminated against because of age or of gender or of race. And that's something that the positivists don't look at because it's not like explicitly observable, right? So then the critical researchers, they're the ones who go in and say, no, there's something a bit deeper here that we need to look at. It's not just 1 + 1 = 2, right? And if we maybe carry that same example and then go to the interpretivist, they would say, well, how does this person, the applicant, or the person who's interviewing, how do they make meaning? How did they come to the decision of who to hire? Sure, they might have looked at qualifications and the experience, but maybe there's something else that is important to this person, maybe the values of the applicant that, is not something that's observable, but is meaningful to the person who's hiring. So they decided not to hire someone who checks all the boxes, but because of the meaning or the value that this person felt the applicant didn't have, they didn't hire them. So it's sort of just levels of the same levels of the same, or what sides of the same coin, right? So that's how we can look at it in terms of the various approaches in research. Sorry, how would the interpretive person look at this? Yeah, so that's just what I said, Caitlin. If we look at the interpretivers, will look at how does the meaning, or what meaning does the person who is hiring make of the situation, or even the person who is being interviewed. So they just look at the experience of the person. Yeah, no, that's okay. They look at the experience and the meaning making, and they saying that while the fact that I hired this person goes a lot deeper than this person meeting the qualifications. There's maybe I felt some sort of connection to the person because they spoke on, a certain experience in the interview that I connected with. And so that meaning that that connection that we developed was meaningful for me and made me, and played a role in my hiring this person. That's just an example. Amy, you wanted to say something?
Yes, I just had a question. I know I've been speaking a lot. So basically, these three approaches, it's like at different, over time, people added ways to really study social patterns. So
Right.
one could approach a situation like you're hiring a person for a job and use the interpretive approach, but then a critical social scientist could take it a step further and then analyze that and then get a far more thorough result. Correct?
Yeah.
Something like that.
Exactly. It's basically how just the social sciences has developed over time, where, as time goes on, we start uncovering that, listen, social reality is a lot more complex. Humans are a lot more complex. So it's very difficult to just look at a particular thing. And maybe something that will help us to remember the positive is this is mostly used in the natural sciences, right? So basically the social scientists came and said you can't study humans the same way you're studying natural science. You can't study gravity the same way you're studying human relations, because there's a lot more complexity there, and that's why they've developed these alternative approaches. So Caitlin's asking, would a combination of these three approaches be the ideal approach? Honestly, I don't think there's an ideal approach. It depends on what you're studying. So for example, interpretivist would make no sense in the natural science, but it makes completely sense in social science. But yeah, it just depends. But you can use a combination of some of them for different elements of a study. I can't think of an example right now, but I'm sure it is possible. But usually you'd go in with one framework guiding you, one approach guiding your research. All right, so that was a lot, but I think it's good. It helps us to grapple with the material that we're covering a lot deeper, and this is what I want us to do, so that and not just for exams. I think just by the time we walk away from this module, that we have just this clear understanding of social science research as a whole, that anyone can ask us questions and we can confidently speak on it. Okay, so I actually wanted us to, if there are no questions, maybe I should pause. Are there any questions at this point? Anything you want us to just re-explain or cover? Okay, I don't see anything. Thank you. Right. So I wanted us to go into look at report writing, but I thought before we go into report writing, which of course is a very important skill, but I did want to link it, of course, to our module. And I thought it would be important for us to look at the nature of social science research, the structure of the research paper before you go into writing of a report. Just to give us a big picture view, to be able to facilitate our understanding of the smaller parts. Because if you go through your study guide, you'd see, we have the sections about theories and literature review and methods and data collection methods, sampling, and all of these things. So it's all these little parts, but I thought it'd be good for us to maybe just step back and see the full picture, so that when we go in, we sort of understand how it all fits together and where it all comes from. I see a question here. Okay, cool. So I'm following the stages of research from our study guide, and I'm going to not run through it, but I'm going to go through it just to help us get a basic overview and understanding of what it is, so that if you haven't had time to really delve into the study guide, that you have sort of a point of reference to start from, or just a basic understanding of different parts. Okay, so the first part is the first stage, of course, is you define the problem. If we think about social science research, what it is, basically us wanting to find out more about social reality, about the nature of human relationships, or the nature of societal issues. And this can range anything from gender-based violence that we've been talking about, to maybe something that's really relevant right now in our context is, what are the effects of corruption on, the South African population? What is the effects of gangsterism in various communities? So, there are all these societal issues that are out there. And so social science research really is about uncovering and exploring those issues with the aims of finding solutions to those problems. So it then makes sense that the first place that we would start with in this process is in defining the problem. First, want to identify what problem is it that we want to solve as social science researchers. Yeah. Amy, is that an old hand or a new hand? I see the hand up there. Okay, must have been an old one. All right, so our first stage is we define the problem. Okay, is we define the problem, and within the stage there are a number of sub-topic or sub-stages, I'd say. The first one being our research design or plan, and how I like to understand the research design or the plan is basically if you're about to build a house, right? The first thing that you'd probably have is, what's it called? Is it like a floor plan? Right. I don't know if that's the correct term. But yeah, you'd have a floor plan first of the house, a blueprint. That's the word. Thank you. You'd have a blueprint of the house first, and that blueprint is going to guide basically everything about the building of that house. It's going to determine the spacing. It's going to determine the materials that will be used, the structure of the house, and the structure of the house, of course, will determine how many rooms, and that will determine what kind of materials you need. That will determine how much time it's going to take, how much it's going to cost. So basically, your blueprint is your guide for your house, right? And in the same way, our research design then is going to be the guide for our research. It basically breaks down everything that you need to be able to conduct this research, or the plan that you're going to put in place. And yeah, following that is our research problem, which is then basically just what it is we're wanting to solve, or the thing that we're wanting to study. Then we move on to our literature review, and I'm just like basically just giving quick one-liners about this because we are going to delve into them a lot deeper in other sections, sorry. Our literature review basically is a study of the literature, and if I were to explain that to my little sister, I would say, if you want to make an argument, you need facts, you need proof. You need proof that has been verified about this thing that you are wanting to speak about. So this is what your literature review gives us. It gives us the theoretical backing of what we want to say as researchers. And we're saying that, listen, these are not things that are just coming from me. I'm not just like picking these things and these theories out of my head. Like, it has been written on. People, these are the facts. You know, people have researched and say that there is a problem of crime in Cape Town. There is research about it. There have been studies about this. You know, it is a fact. And so I am basically pulling on prior research to strengthen my case. And that's what the literature review allows us to do. It basically gives, just strengthens the argument that you're willing to make, that you are going to make in your research. And within the literature review, we have, of course, theories that govern the things that we're going to say. If I'm saying that violence, if I'm saying that people are not born violent, then I need to have theories, you know, and studies that have, you know, that can back what I'm saying up. The theories that would say, for example, the nature versus nurture theory, which is like either people are born with something or the environment in which they grow up in determines how they turn out. And so I can pull on that theory and say, because of that, I am saying people are not inherently violent. So theories are very important in, again, just strengthening your arguments. And then we have assumptions and hypotheses. Assumptions and hypotheses, which are basically what assumptions, I suppose, what assumptions you're going in with as a researcher. And we say this because whenever a researcher wants to study something, they already have an idea of what they think the outcome is going to be, or what they think the cause is. If I'm saying I want to study the effects of corruption for ordinary South Africans, I already have an idea of what I'm going to find. Well, I already have assumptions about what these effects are, you know, so it's important to put these sort of at the beginning of the research, that these are the assumptions that I'm going in with as a research. And assumptions are not bad and hypotheses are not bad. Of course, you're putting out there to say, so as I'm going about my research, my task now is to test if my assumptions or hypotheses are true. So the process of research will either refute or, what's the other word? Or prove, refute or prove my hypothesis. And then we are led by our research questions, which is usually just the research problem changed into a question form so that you're actually asking. So the research question is, what are the effects of, just basically turning your problem into a question so that it is answerable. Is there any questions there? Sorry. Okay, are there any questions on this? No, I'm going to assume not. We move on. So stage 2 is once I've basically set the problem down. I've defined the problem. Now I'm going to go about and find information or obtain information about the problem, or to help me answer the questions that I have put out. And this happens, of course, through sampling and data collection. Sampling being when you are taking a subset from a population to be able to collect your data. So again, I'm trying to not delve too deeply into this. And then data collection is going out, finding information, finding the facts, speaking to people to get all the relevant information that are going to help you as the researcher answer the question, and see if your assumptions was true or not. Because, and this is obviously a very important part of research, because I can't just sit at my little desk and say, so ordinary South Africans are suffering because of corruption, and this is how they're doing it. People can't find jobs, they can't do this, I'm just listing all the facts, all my assumptions, and I submit that. That's not research, that's an opinion piece. So the difference between a research project and an opinion piece is that you actually go out and you find data, you speak to people, you get the facts, you see what the statistics are, and then you gather all of that to build a case. It's not a matter of just sitting and making your own case, even if it is right. Like I said, the researcher usually has the assumptions, and of course the assumptions are based on things that they have seen. We watch the news and we speak to people and we know what's happening, but it still needs to be backed up by a large body of data so that we can prove that our research is valid and credible. Amy?
Yeah, hi. No, I had a thought. If one has an assumption or a certain belief that can make your research maybe more one-sided, or what's the word, unacceptable to modern society. So what happens if you've observed something from, or you've gotten maybe some answers back from a certain survey that you've used in your research, and then you come to a conclusion, maybe you don't agree with it, or maybe you do, that person will lose credibility if maybe the research presents something that is on the general scale not agreed with anymore, but maybe it's still valid.
So no, the person does not lose credibility at all, because this is the point of research. It's also to challenge our assumptions and to challenge our biases. So the researcher putting forth their biases at the beginning is basically good research practice, or good. It's just ethical, because they recognize that they are coming in with specific biases and assumptions, and at the end of the day, your data is what needs to lead you as a researcher. So whatever I thought at the beginning, if my data at the end of the day says something else, that's what I need to report on. Then the researcher needs to be, has to be basically flexible, open enough to say, okay, my assumptions were wrong. This is what the data said, because that's what the community, the scientific community needs. They need to know what is the data saying, not what you're saying or what your personal feelings are. So it all lays in what the data says, what the data is giving us.
Okay.
Thanks for that question. All right, so once we've collected our data, the next task is then to analyze and interpret the information, and this is where you really get to delve into your data. And there are two sections that are covered in the study guide: is how to describe and interpret quantitative data, and then how to describe and interpret qualitative data. So I'm sure by now we all know what qualitative and quantitative is, correct? The differences between qualitative and quantitative. This comes up so much in the assignments and the exams. Yes. Okay. So yeah, so we'll, depending on the study, of course, if you've conducted a qualitative research study, then you will only analyze your qualitative data. Sometimes there is a mix of two data methods. So you could have quantitative and qualitative data to analyze, and that's just then for the researcher to know how to analyze both of those and to bring it all together at the end. An example of a study that would have both is, let's say, the effects of unemployment, of youth unemployment, right? So on the quantitative side, you want to get the stats about youth unemployment, maybe look at Stats SA from 2010 up to 2020, what the stats have been like, how many youth between so and so ages are unemployed, how many are studying, how many. So you have the quantity, you have those numbers. You have those numbers that you can analyze. And then on the other hand, the qualitative part is having actually gone out and speaking to these unemployed youth and really getting their experiences and what their lives have been like, what their journey has been like, trying to find work, and how that has basically affected their lives and their families, etc., etc. So in that case, you would have two sets of data that you can then use to build a stronger case. I always say that putting or using both builds a stronger case, because on the one hand, it's not just numbers, because numbers are very, of course, impersonal. So it's easy for someone to just read a report that is just like, oh, 80% of da 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 da, or 60% of youth are da da da. It removes. I always feel like it removes the human out of human sciences or social sciences. So once you put that with, these are the experiences of people, this is what people are saying, it just, it brings it together so nicely. So that's our analysis. And then stage 4 is then where we go into communicating the results or writing of the report. So that's the final stage. But of course, you would have been writing as you're researching. You're writing little notes along the way, analyzing, and then at the end, it's just about putting it together and making conclusions based on what the data has told us. But essentially being led by the data that we have collected, and then ensuring that the writing of the research report is in line with the writing conventions of whatever, what's the word? The writing conventions of whichever platform that the research is going to go into, and that's something that's also discussed. I think it's in the final chapter of the study guide, where the way that the research report is going to be written, of course, is context specific. So if I've done all this research and it's going to be for the government, I'm going to write it in a very different way to if I'd written it to submit to a scientific journal or for a master's or a PhD project. So then we'll look at the writing process. Sure, that was a mouthful. Are there any questions? Okay, it doesn't look like it. No
Lorraine?
questions. Thank you. Lorraine? Yes, Adele?
While you're waiting on any questions, a last reminder for your students to complete the attendance register, but also the evaluation form that I've posted in the chat section, please.
All right, thanks, Adele. So everyone has, just please make sure that you have filled in the attendance register and the evaluation form that is now in the chat box. Thank you. So just to wrap up, I want us to maybe for next week to work through the stages that we've just discussed and draft a one-page outline or like a half a page outline of a research report with a particular topic. And I think this is just so that we get an understanding of the full picture of, because essentially these stages are our content, our study material. So if you can visualize it with your own example, it'll be easy when we go through when you go through your study guide. It'll be easier when you're going through the study guide to be able to connect it back to your own sort of little draft project on the side. So that's something I just want to challenge you to do. Take a note of the process and just refer to your study unit to fill in if there are any gaps or things that you don't understand. That you can also bring it to our session next week and then we can discuss that. Yeah, and I think just in closing, I wanted to find out if there is anything from your side that you'd want us to pay particular attention to. I'm going off the assumption that we are all familiar with the study material. We know what is required of us in terms of assignments and exams, and if there are certain concepts or certain things within our notes that you'd want us to look into. And more high level things, because as I said, we can't delve too deeply into content, maybe just high level things that will help give an understanding of more than one topics. If you have questions, the e-tutor group discussions, I'm not too sure. Adele, are there group discussions for this module? I'm actually not sure about that. I'm not sure if Adele is still with us. Yeah, so I mean, if you can maybe create, just like a quick summary of an example research project, maybe of your own, if there's something that you, a social science issue that you are interested in exploring. Of course, we're not going to, really delve into it, but, if you can just make an outline of what your problem would be, what assumptions you're going in with, how you would maybe collect your data, what, who are the participants you would speak to, what tool you would want to use, what kind of data would it be quantitative data, would it be qualitative data? Just a very high level, very drafted outline of a research project. Yeah. Cool. I think that's been it. I think we lost Adele. Adele, you're still here?
Yes, I am.
Yes. Sorry, there was just a question about the e-tutor group discussions. If students have questions about the assignments, should they just go to the e-tutor group discussions, or?
What kind of questions about assignments? Is it about assignment marks? Or
I'm assuming about content.
Content. Lauren, our one-on-one sessions are starting as from next week, Monday. So are you going to be able to assist with those queries as well?
Yeah, but I think I would want those to be rather group discussions, maybe, so it can help more. Okay. But yeah, we can maybe chat about that. So I'll take a note of that, Amy, and
they can also post if they are more than one student having similar kind of queries, they can post it in this chat, and then you can have a record of that to organize group sessions if you feel like that.
All right. Yeah, I think that would be good.
Yes.
So this meeting chat, will it always be available? Or because I'm assuming if the student is working on an assignment and then comes across, a question, I'm just wondering.
I will always have access to this. So once you need it, and once you have your My Unisa login, you will also always have access to the history of chats.
Okay, perfect. Thanks, Adele.
Okay.
Amy, you wanted to clarify?
Yes, hi. No, I was just on the My Unisa site, and the main site where we submit our assessments, there's the discussion forum is not there, but on the other site, the eTutor one, on the discussions, we can't create any forum there. I think that's for the tutors to create, because we don't have that, we don't have those functions of creating a topic like assignment 1 discussion, etc. There's no option for us to do that.
May I please just explain to me where exactly are you referring us to now? Where on my...
So on the RSC2601 -20 -S2 -15E, when I go to that site and I click on discussions, there is no option to create a forum. I think that's the only function, I think, function for the tutors.
Yes, now that is, that belongs to the college. What we're doing here belongs to Unisa Western Cape. So this is our initiative to support students. So your query regarding that platform, you can direct to your lecturer.
Okay. Where
and
is
to your
that?
tutor.
All right. Okay.
Okay,
Okay,
but
thank you. Okay, thank you. Yes,
if
got
you
it.
have queries relating to anything there, you are welcome to pose them to Lauren. And I think that's what she is trying to do in smaller group discussions on this platform.
Okay, cool. All right. Thank you.
Okay.
Right.
Pleasure.
Okay, thank you.
Right. So you will be getting the communication around how to schedule those one-on-one consultations. But if I do see that more than one student obviously wants to discuss a particular section, and then we can make that a small group discussion, and we can schedule that. And to Caitlin, your question about other modules. There are other modules, but it's not all modules. There are specific modules that have been selected for these sessions.
On that, Lauren, the students must go onto My Unisa, then go to My Modules, then to Sites, look for the Western Cape, Unisa Western Cape tab, click on there, and that will guide you to where you will find a list of all the modules that we offer. Now, for facilitation, you guys have to look in the Writing Center and the Numeracy Center, not in the Tutorials tab, but in the Writing Center and the Numeracy Center. Okay? Are there any other questions regarding that? In the initial email we also sent, Lauren, there's a link that takes you to a little handbook that will explain to you how to navigate the My Unisa forum to get to the Western Cape and to the list of modules that we offer facilitation for. Are there any specific modules that you are looking for, students? Any specific modules that you are looking for support? No GGH, but we'll note it. No FRC at this stage, but we will note it. No. Not com, but we're noting it.
Okay.
And I'm going to assume that these are challenging modules. So it's good to know. INS we were planning on, but it didn't come off the ground. But I promise you, I take all of this into consideration. PYC, we might have, but I'm not going to promise at this stage.
Yeah, so I think it, just it'll be useful to just check out that link that was sent in that first email if you have received it. And then you'll see all the modules that are available. But as Adele said, we'll also note the ones that you have mentioned now and look into it. Of course, we can't promise anything, but yeah, we are making notes of it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lauren.
Thank you. So I see. Yes, you may, Adele. All right. I think that's all for today. We'll see each other next week.